here we go. Now, when it comes to why are questions important? Well, the important thing is the questions themselves shouldn't be important. Great interviews, said Dan Patrick, the great sports broadcaster. Great interviews are ones where you remember the answers and not the questions. That's really vital. So it's the answers to the questions that are actually important. And as we go through that, the answers can just lead you to that holy grail of the customer deal, the ideal customer deal, where you are the only one in town that can deliver that solution to their problem there and then. Okay, so why do people buy for you? It's really important. This is a question you should be reflecting on for yourself, for your business. Why do people buy from you? And actually, if you've got great relationships with customers, it's a really good question to ask them after they bought from you, and all the, shall we say, the emotional angst. As if you're pursuing a big deal, there can be a lot of emotion around getting to signature. We'll go into that later on. But actually, it's worth asking an account of yours, a client of yours, can you just tell me, I know what I think are the benefits about my company, but what would you say about doing business with our company? Why do you continue to do business? There can be some really revealing answers to that you may not have considered, and which you can bank and use again later on. So, and I can tell you now that no matter how big or how small the deal is, it comes down to two things. It comes down to, do I trust you? And is the price okay, satisfactory? Not is it as cheap as possible, unless you're from Yorkshire. Where that is a really material consideration. But do I trust you? Is it the right price? Those two things. Everything else is kind of incidental. It comes down to those two things. Now, how you get to that point, that's the complexity, if you like. Okay, so open and closed questions. And I'm sorry if I'm going back to basics. And I am, and I do that deliberately because these are incredibly important. Open questions. Open questions are, by definition, something that you can't say yes or no to. So if I say to one of you, what's your name? You can't say yes or no to that. You have to give an answer. A closed question is if I went to Ian Marlowe, for instance, welcome Ian, and said, are you Ian? Well, the answer, that's a closed question. The answer is yes. You know, if I said to a company, how many employees have you got? That's an open question. You shouldn't ask that question, by the way. You can find that out for the internet. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail. So an open question gathers information, data about your client. So be careful what questions you ask, because your reputation, much as you can gain great information from the questions that you ask, a client or potential client can also get an impression by the quality of your questions, whether you know what you're talking about or not, or whether you're a rookie or whatever it is. So just kind of bear that in mind. Okay, so demonstrate your credibility through asking great questions. So here's a question I have for you. Is knowledge power? Just reflect on that a second. Someone once said knowledge is power. I think it was Richard Nixon, but he had a particular point of view on the world. Is knowledge power? I would argue no, not necessarily. The right knowledge is power, and seeking the right knowledge. So it may be important knowing how many people are in an organization. That may be an important piece of data for your company, but the right knowledge is, well, actually, what are the issues in that company? So what, they've got 200,000 employees, or they've got 2 employees. So what are the issues? What's blocking them grow? What's causing them pain? What pain do I need to solve? That's the right kind of knowledge that you need. Application of the right knowledge is power at the right time. Yes, thank you for that, Belle. Okay, so getting it wrong. Okay, so if anyone can see that, the fiasco of, and this is not a party political thing at all, but this is what happens, it's real and present. This is what happens when you make an announcement, something like 3 weeks ago on the 5 p.m. kind of broadcast. We've got a shipment coming in from Turkey, Well, 3 weeks later, it all turned up if you read the story, and it was the wrong kind of stuff. Most of it had to be sent back. It wasn't good enough. Okay, so it could make you look amateurish if you get stuff wrong. And that email came from speculative email came from a t-shirt salesman going to the emergency service website saying, I can provide you PPE. It's even when you're selling, it's important to ask the right questions. But when you're procuring, if you're buying stuff on behalf of your company, or in this instance on behalf of the nation, it's really important to ask the right questions, like quality, PPE, is it meeting the right standards? They're equally important the other side of the table as well. So that's part of the art of making sure. Now, if that particular person had any kind of integrity, he would have said, look, it's this spec. He would have managed expectations. It's this spec. It's not the Rolls Royce or the Mercedes Benz. It's a Hyundai or some other make of car, but it's not in the premium bracket. It's this. And if they'd have said that, and government ministers had said, okay, yes, we'll still buy that, thank you for letting us know, they can manage expectations. It's vitally important to do that. But actually, so that was a case of bad business for that person, because he's going to have to return all their money at some stage, and bad business on part of government in this instance for not, frankly, that was a project that was doomed to success. If you've ever had that, they were going to go through that, whatever was going on. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about a guy called Dennis. I used to work in Canary Wharf. He was the CIO, the Chief Information Officer for quite a big bank based on Canary Wharf. And I only found out about this after I've been dealing with him for about 3 years. And he said to me, when I'm buying him a pizza one day, he said, Keith, do you know what I do when I see salespeople in particular for the first time? He said, Michaela, my assistant, will come in after 7 minutes, because I tell her to come in after 7 minutes, and she'll say, the boss needs to see you upstairs. And he said, and if the meeting's not going well, if the person hasn't impressed me within 7 minutes, told me something I don't know, or for something not asking ridiculous, inane questions, as often happens when you're dealing with potentially large people with some really big egos. He said, that's my excuse to abandon the meeting, get out of there. There's no meeting upstairs. I need to finish the meeting, and I need to do it, without hurting anyone's feelings. Anyone could understand. Boss needs to see you right away. But if the meeting's going well, if the person has credibility, somehow engaged in the process, then I'll tell Michaela, that's okay, hang on, I'll come up after this meeting's finished. Now that happens. Now, Dennis is not the worst person I've ever worked with, or the most demanding, but that is a thing. So just be aware that kind of behavior can go on, and that's why it's vitally important to demonstrate your credibility in what you do for a living within the first few minutes of a meeting. Okay, right. So identifying customer needs is a two-way street. That's the other thing. It's about procurement people making sure they're buying the right stuff. But in sort of the second strand of my career, I'm really keen for sales to be esteemed in a slightly higher regard in the UK than it is in other countries in the world. In the United States, sales is a really esteemed career in the same bracket as being a lawyer or an accountant, maybe. Okay, right, moving on. Okay, so principles for asking what I would call high gain questions. You can ask a question and you get very little from it, but you can ask a high gain question, you get lots from it. Not necessarily in terms of bits and bytes, but in terms of richness, of quality of information. So number one, listen. It's really hard to listen. And listening is not just about being quiet while the other person is talking. That's not listening at all. Listening is really hearing what's going on, processing what's going on, and somehow giving non-verbal clues to the other person. And that's particularly true on Zoom, because if you're both talking, you'll run into each other, you'll get audio collisions, you won't be able to hear each other. So non-verbal communications are vital. Listening is part of that, and that's true no matter what the size of your deal. Can you solve their problem? So if they're giving you a need, a customer need that you just can't solve, then you're going to have to, well, fess up isn't the right phrase, but you're going to have to, and this will clear the way for you if you act with integrity, that you get to deal with that person again another day when they have got something that you sell, when they have got a need for something that you sell. So I went into, actually it was Johnson's, it's a positive story, so I'll name them. Johnson's, the dry cleaners, a couple of weeks ago. And I said to them, I had this jumper, hopefully we're out of the jumper season now. I said to them, can you clean this for me? And they said, actually, I had a mark on it or something like that. And they said, we can't do that. You're better off going to this place down the road that's a specialist dry cleaner. We don't have the equipment to do that. Now, that was really positive from my standpoint. I thought they've just got themselves an even more loyal customer now. They declined business because it wouldn't have been good business for them. And I invite you all to have that frame of mind. You're probably doing something more complex than dry cleaning jumpers or shirts or whatever it happens to be. But that spirit of integrity, then I would encourage you to build that into everything you say and do with your account base. Okay, so can you solve their problem? Now, so get a no early. If you can't, then thank heavens, no early, disengage from the process. I can't help you. Very sorry. You live to fight another day with that person, because that person may go somewhere else and they'll remember you if you deliver bad service going forward, because it's not just about your company, it's about your personal reputation. Now, what you might do is say, Mr. Customer, we can't do all of that, but perhaps it's perhaps you're a virtual administrator and they want you to run, they want a whole gambit of services, some of which you can't provide. Maybe it's, I don't know, being a PowerPoint professional, being able to put Microsoft PowerPoint presentations together, really ultra slick stuff. And maybe that's outside of your skill set or your team's skill set. You could do rudimentary stuff, but not really high-end stuff. You could say, okay, Mr. Customer, I can't do that, but I can do all the basics. I am brilliant at that. And that's called a flanking strategy. That's where you're just going to take a piece of what the customer wants to buy, and you have integrity, and you say, I can't do that, so maybe you need to go elsewhere for that. This bit I'm really keen on working with you on. That's high integrity selling, and you'll be remembered. Even if you don't get that particular deal, you'll be remembered for having that point of view. Okay, so back to it, new business versus bad business. And feedback, detect buying signals. Again, back to someone just might want to buy there and then. Well, how much do you charge? Can you start on Monday? All of these things, these are buying signals. We will talk about that more in the next webinar on negotiation, and also a little bit later on as well. Okay, right. Ask for the order. Oh my God, salespeople. 90% of them won't even ask for the order. You've got to ask. You may not be 100% sales. Sales might be just a portion of what you do, as it is, frankly, for most small business owners. They don't ask for the order. You've got to get the timing right. You've got to get your sales cycle in line with the customer's buying cycle. They might not be ready to buy just yet, but you can be confirming that they're comfortable with what they've heard. That's called a test close. Again, more about that in webinar number 8 with closing. But ask for the order when the time is right, or a test close. How does that sound? More about that a bit later. And make sure that whatever the customer wants to buy and you decide, yes, I can deliver that, make sure you can delight them. That's just unbelievably important. We'll talk about that more in webinar number 9, maximizing the sale. Okay, right, so the value pyramid, cracking on. Identifying customer needs. So basic questions that won't differentiate you from your competition, but you may need to ask just to gather information or data. On the right-hand side, you should be able to see, okay, so what is it? Tell me about this. What's the scope of what you want to buy? When do you want to buy it? Timelines. If they want to buy it and they want it in place Monday, maybe you can't deliver to that. That's getting your no early and dealing with that. Or maybe they want to buy something that's in 18 months' time. It's far too early to chat, and you can kind of talk around that. But that's basic information. Also, of course, and I have to say, something as British people, we are, money is a vulgar subject often. But in business, maybe you're not comfortable using the word money. And I have to say, I had my own hang up for years asking for money. So if you don't like that word, use the word budget. What's your budget for this? And that puts it in business parlance, takes the emotion out of it, the sort of fear of rejection if anyone goes through that. Use the question, what's your budget? And that will also indicate whether they're serious about buying the service that you sell or whether they're not. Because if you sell a service where the floor price, the minimum price to buy that service is, I don't know, £25,000 a year, and they've got a budget of £500, you know there's a problem. So you're going to have to identify whether they're being serious, or whether you've misunderstood what they want to buy, or whatever it is. But anyway, there's a mismatch, and you're going to have to get to the bottom of that. On the left-hand side, more valuable questions, once you've gathered that initial data, is why are you doing this? What's your why though? Why have you got a need to buy this service? And some rich data could come out of that. It could be, well, we're already buying this stuff from someone else and we hate them because of, okay, the next question is, well, why do you hate them? Or, I don't like using that word, but I use it for pragmatism. So why are you buying this service? Because you're what you're trying to identify here, of course, why they want to do it, but the subtext to that is: are you just a number? Are you in front of a procurement person who's got to get 3 quotes? They are only ever going to go with their existing supplier because they really like them. They've got a relationship. They're not brilliant, but they're better the devil all of those things. And you might just be cannon, or what I would call column fodder. You are just a number on a spreadsheet. Yes, I got 3 quotes, Mr. Line Manager. And our current provider, would you Adam and Eve it, is the best price and the best solution. Let's just continue with what we're going. People hate change. So that's because a lead is just, if you're not careful, it's just an opportunity to waste loads of time. So why are you doing this? Drill down. And here's the vital thing. If you develop credibility with your customer, and at which time you're also building trust. When you build credibility and you exude some degree of faithfulness, of trust, and loyalty, then they will open up. They will tell you more interesting, perhaps more sensitive or confidential data around their company, which they wouldn't reveal to anyone else, because you've built that trust. They know that you're discreet. You won't put that information out on the internet. You'll use it sparingly and judiciously. If you get to the point where you can monetize their problem, that is gold dust. So if we're talking about a manufacturing company, let's say, let's take a manufacturing company. Let's take Aston Martin. Aston Martin have had to totally re-engineer their manufacturing process at their South Wales plant to allow for new social distancing, which they never had to allow for before. That means they can only about halve the manufacturing capacity of that factory to build cars. So they're going to have to adjust all their forecasts. So how to monetize that change is, well, that's going to cost you, pick a number, 500 million a year to make that change. But the minute you get to monetize that, you get their attention, and hopefully you're using their data. Their data can be trusted because it's come from them. But the moment you get to monetize, work out with them how much that problem is costing them, you've got something fantastic to work with then. Okay, and then asking the question, apart from you, Mr. Customer, is there anyone else who I need to talk to about this service, get their point of view on that supplier or on the service that they need? We'll talk more about this in pursuit strategy number 6 which is the next one in the series. I'll give you, for example, when I was on the wharf and Morgan Stanley were a client of mine, excuse me, in 1999, in fact, Mr. Marlowe may well have been on that one. We did a service contract worth £250,000 or something like that over 3 years, and there were just three people required to sign that off. At the end of that 3-year service agreement, so we're into '02 then, I am going back in time, but this is highly relevant. There was a new act, Financial Services Act, came in called Sarbanes-Oxley, or SOX, you may have heard it referred to, which was quite onerous in terms of governance of investment banks in particular. And so that same deal needed 26 signatures on it. Same deal, same service, slightly increased price, but that didn't affect, there was no price banding or anything like that. But because the amount of governance covering London and New York, there were 23 extra people required to sign that off. And I didn't need to meet with all of them, but there were certain people I needed to meet with in order to get an overwhelming yes. So that it was so overwhelming that if anyone said no, unless they were really powerful, that deal would go through. We'll talk about that more in Pursuit Strategy next week. Okay, so now this may surprise you, but in the current time, one of the questions that will get you into the preferred bracket on the right-hand side there, the top pyramid, do I trust you, is a really simple one. How are you? Because we live in extraordinary times. If you've heard that old cliche about people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, never has a point in history come about where that question is more important than almost anything else. How are you? But you can't ask that when you're at your first meeting where you have no relationship, because it will come across as inauthentic, false, and you won't get the right answer anyway. Only by building trust and getting your way up that value pyramid can you ask the question with any credibility and get a heartfelt or authentic response. Assuming you don't know these people, it's the first time you've met them, you have to have credibility and brand equity, I would argue, to ask that question credibly. Right. Okay, the next one. What does great look like to the board? So when we do this, uncovering information, how are they going to decide whether it's been a success, whether it's been a stomping failure? How does that work? Tell me what that looks like. That's a great question to ask. Tips. Now, you should do this ideally before, excuse me one second. You should do this ideally before you can get to meet the client. TIPS stands for trends, implications, possibilities, solutions. I'm going to talk about that in a later webinars. Trends, implications, possibilities, solutions. This is stuff that's going on in your client's world, in your client's market. So if you like Aston Martin, let's take that as a case in point. They can't control COVID-19, but it is a trend, and it has very serious implications for their business. How can possibilities? Okay, well, you can manufacture if you respect social distancing, if it's nice and clean. So these are the possibilities. So they're buying lots of extra cleaning services. Everything's been cleaned once an hour to the right standard. And that's the solution that will allow them to continue manufacturing cars. So that's the solution and the possibility. That's tips. So remember that going forward. And bring a gift. I'm not going to major on this. Bring a gift. I don't mean a bottle of scotch or anything like that. Bring a gift. Your gift to that client or potential client is an idea. You've been researching the client. You know all about that client. And you know what's going on in their market, and you bring some insight. Tell them something that they don't yet know about their company, about their market, about your point of view on that market. My goodness, if you can get to that stage, that is the holy grail, when you can bring a gift and for it to be received, and you can start to influence the agenda from your company's standpoint. So bring a gift. we can talk about that more later on, but that's really important. Okay, right now, so hopefully you've got a whole barrel load of notes, and this is where I'm gonna just hold my fingers together just a little bit. I want to show you a bit of a clip right now from someone who did some research, and they are going along to a meeting for the first time. They've not met this person before, and they are they're going to give their point of view on a particular situation. And what I'm going to do is just over, I think, a minute long. I'm going to play it all the way through, and then I'm going to come back, and then we're going to analyse this for a few minutes going forward, and then we'll start to wrap up. I hope that's okay. So, 1 second. Here we go.
Can't hear it.
I want to suggest that from now on, we contract out your racetrack security for the Peaky Blinders. We'll be saving you a lot of money, Mr. Kim. A lot of money. In return, you give us 5% of the take and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn. 6 after 1 year if we are all satisfied with the service. What do you say, Mr. Kimber?
I'm struggling to hear that, Keith.
Same here.
You're struggling to hear it.
Can't hear any of it.
Very faint, very faint.
Well, even if you adjust your volumes?
Yeah.
Right, okay, 1 second. All right. I don't know if I can. I don't know if it's dependent on my volume. Right, 1 second. Was that any better?
No, the music was there, but the voice is very low.
Okay, right. Okay. Let me think about that. And I will record something specially and go through it where it will work. Okay, I'm sorry if that hasn't worked. Anyway, listen, let me tell you, I can send you a link to that clip. So if it at least worked visually, you saw, did anyone recognize the program?
Yes.
Okay, right. So it's Thomas Shelby. I think it's series 2, where he's going into a race course, and he's going to meet Billy Kimber, the gangster. And I'll send you all a clip. If you've all registered for this, then I'll send you a link to that, and I'll give you some notes accompanying it. But it basically goes in, he makes an entrance, he throws all that cash down on the table, and he has just purloined that from the Lee brothers, who are the, should we say, the outsource company that are currently delivering that service to Billy Kimber. Okay, so I'm trying to take a gangster-ridden 1920s scenario and parlaying it in today's sort of modern context, if you like. So anyway, he's done that, and he's basically identified the problem, which is, so he's done some research. He paid a big compliment to that customer or that potential client in doing some research and saying, your current outsourcer isn't delivering. In fact, they're taking money from you. They're stealing money from you. You come to me, Mr. Prospect. You give your business to the Peaky Blinders, and we will provide you an outsourced security management function for your race courses. You'll make loads more money because none of it will be stolen. And what we're going to do is we're going to do that at 3 of your race courses, because also, so Billy Kimber runs loads of race courses. To ask for all the business may have been just a bit too much. Back to the first meeting, he doesn't really have any credibility. You don't even know if that vendor can deliver that service. And And we've all seen, Carillion comes to mind. They just got so much business, they couldn't handle it all. And they're a big company. They couldn't handle it all, and they went down the toilet. And that can happen. And that's bad business. And it's bad business on your part because you've accepted too much that you can't deliver. And that could happen. So very sensibly, Thomas Shelby, the main character, said, don't give me all your business. Just, that's called a flanking strategy. And just give me this little bit over here. And if after 12 months you're delighted with the service, we'll increase it to 6 race courses, not just 3, but 6. So he's going to double his business in 12 months if everyone's happy with the service. And then, I won't bore you anymore with that. I'll do something special and mail out a link. It's better than something I could put together myself. Stephen Knight and his writing team, right on the money. It's a brilliant sketch. Okay, right. I'll move on, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, right. So summing up, we're in the summing up kind of phase now. Identifying customer needs. What have we learned? Hopefully, loads. Active listening. Listening, as we know, is not just being quiet while the other person is talking. Much more than that. And it's not just waiting for a gap in the conversation so that you can say whatever you were going to say without processing anything the other person was going to say. That's not listening. I was on a master's program. I did sales and marketing for this master's program for a while, where we had a role. You've all heard of a keynote speaker, but we had the role of keynote listener. And the keynote listener would sit in meetings, and they would take notes, and not just the words, but the actions, the tonality, everything that was going on in that particular meeting, so that they could relay it. And almost like the emotional experience of being in that meeting is an incredibly tiring process, but incredibly important and enriching if you are a great listener, much more than just not saying anything. Okay, so it's conversation, it's not interrogation. There's a great advert on telly at the minute with, I think it's Aviva, where the woman is asking the caller into the call center, what kind of lock do you have? Is it compliant to BS, whatever? So you're going to get a conversation, not an interrogation. I like that. Where's the customer's pain? So all customers have issues of some kind, but are they painful enough to spend money on and get rid of that problem? Can you actually solve their problem? Ask yourself, reflect on that problem. And if you can, fantastic, move forward. But if not, withdraw professionally, unless you can come to another agreement whereby you just solve a bit of the problem and then consciously guide them somewhere else to someone else that can solve the rest of the problem. Take a gift, that bit of insight that's going to get you gold dust in return. Gold dust that probably no other vendor is going to get. Monetize the problem. The moment you get to the point where you understand enough of what's going on, gee, Mr. Customer, that must be really frustrating. What's the evidence for this? Well, you know, so-and-so can't do their job properly. 50% of their job is this can't be done because of whatever. The moment you can get to put a number on that problem that the customer or potential customer agrees with, because it's their data, you've got something really tangible and promising to work to, and also help you price your service accordingly. And also, if you remember one thing from this is no guessing. You can by all means make assumptions, because sometimes things are really complex. You don't know all the answers, and nobody knows what the answers are. But when you provide a price for a particular service or product for a customer, your price includes certain assumptions. Certain assumptions are that you're going to do this, your end of the bargain as well. You're going to have all this done. Certain assumptions, but absolutely no guessing. There's nothing more frustrating than going back to someone and saying, you said you do this by this deadline. And they said, yeah, but I guessed the engineer would have been there the day before and done everything. We just guessed. It's okay to guess. What's not okay is not to tell anyone else that you're guessing. So you've got to make assumptions, no guessing. Okay. Reminder about that, Dennis, 7 minutes on Canary Wharf, where he would have his assistant come in, and that would be the test of whether he was unengaged, not interested in what was going on, and therefore the meeting was abandoned. Sorry, you know, is the boss is calling, I've got to go upstairs. Or if you made a really good impression within 7 minutes, then actually Michaela, the assistant, I'll go up and see him after I finish this meeting. So be aware. So what's the message? The message is great questions, credibility early on. And that way you've got a foundation to build on something. Okay, so here's a quick exercise. We've got 8 minutes left. So knowing what you now know about identifying customer needs, what one thing are you going to start doing? And what one thing are you going to stop doing from now on? Can I just give you 30 seconds to reflect on that? If you're comfortable doing so, perhaps you want to put it in the chat box below. There may be nothing. You may be 100% perfect already, but just reflect on that. Good point, Nigel Smith. Consider things that would delight the customer. That's what we want, a delighted customer base. That leads us on to net promoter scores. If you're familiar with that expression, customers that will happily recommend you elsewhere, incredibly important. Okay, so thank you for engaging in that. The next webinar is going to be next Wednesday, 11 a.m. We're going to be talking about pursuit strategies. Generally for larger deals, an important component, larger deals, i.e. if more than one person is involved in saying yes. And that can often be smaller deals, but riskier. There'll be some element of risk where you need somebody really senior to bless it, if you like, or at least not say no. So not for everyone, but actually, if you're in a company that is on that growth trajectory, when you want to start doing larger deals, pursuit strategy is a really important point. I just wanted to do it in sequential order, that's all. So, and then finally, I want to tell you about this, and a number of people have taken this up. I believe LinkedIn is really important to my business. And a company that I'm partnering with, and I beg your pardon, but I can't see if James is on the line. I think he was going to be busy. James, you're welcome to shout out if you are on the line. Can't see all the boxes, but anyway, I have a partnership with InLeads. Anyone can get a 2-week free trial. You don't need me for that. InLeads will help you build first-line connections, relevant first-line connections, whether that's by geography or seniority or sector, whatever it is. Look at them, www.inleads.com.co.uk, I beg your pardon, .co.uk. Anyone can get a 2-week free trial on that. They will help you build about 300 more connections by answering a few questions, so you give an indication of who you're looking to talk to, who you're looking to connect with, and they'll do it for you on a bigger scale and much quicker than you'd be able to do it yourself. There's the deal that I struck with InLeads, because I'm working with them quite closely at the moment, is that you will get coming through my affiliate link, you'll get 25% off the plan price if you decide to subscribe after the 2-week period, and there's no obligation. But I would encourage you to investigate. If you're interested, I'll publish a link afterwards, following this up afterwards. So I'd encourage you to investigate that. If anyone would like, again, a number of companies are hurting just now, and we may not be comfortable with disclosing that in public, but if anyone wants a 15-minute one-to-one with me, You're very welcome to. There's absolutely no obligation, but I would ask in return that you come prepared with those 1 or 2 questions well thought out, so that we can have a productive 15 minutes rather than just tea and biscuits. But that's the only obligation, if you like. And if there's a quid pro quo, listen, I had a message from someone after the call 2 weeks ago now, who said, my revenue is 94% down based on this time last year because of COVID-19. Their business was largely service-based, face-to-face. He said, I've got £5.67 or thereabouts in his bank account. I can't afford it, but you need lots of help on your website. And that's true, because I'm rubbish at that. But if I can help you with your website, can you help me with my go-to-market strategy and all the rest of it? And actually, you know what? That was okay. So if you want to have that kind of conversation with me, but not necessarily for websites, for anything else that might be of interest, by all means come to me. I may also know someone else that is happy to engage with you on that basis as well. So don't be embarrassed or uncomfortable. Just come to me. We will work something out, or I'll point you in the right direction. And you are not alone. I promise you that. If you're having a hard time with it. Okay, so now we've got just a couple of minutes left. If there's anyone else that would like to ask any questions at all, talk less, listen more. Yeah, well done, Stuart. But if not, then be more direct and go ahead from client to produce a proposal. Yep. Provided the proposal is just to confirm what you've already talked about. Otherwise, that can go into a bit of a black hole, never to be heard from again. Yeah, absolutely. Can have an infinite learning curve. Wow, I like that. You never know you've applied. Brilliant. Yes. Okay. Some really good points there. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Okay. Right. Moving on. So, also in the chat box in the last minute or so, if there's any subjects you'd be interested in hearing more about, there's lots available online these days. But if there's anything that you want to talk about, you may not want to put it in the chat box right now, but it might come to you later on. I'd be really keen to hear from you, because I'm really keen to start planning the next series of free webinars. I'm going to be doing them every week, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. I hopefully ad infinitum, but definitely not ad nauseum. Okay, so big thank you. Big thank yous for everyone coming online. Sorry, Giuliani.
Sorry, have you seen the questions where people are saying that it would be fantastic to have back issues of these webinars? Do you want to point people in the direction of where they're posted?
Oh, that's a great shout. Thank you. Thank you very much. There is a YouTube channel, which for the minute is free. You can find me on there, Sales Marvel. And all the actually there, I think they're, I'll go in and check, but they should all be public. They're certainly all published, but some of them are unlisted. I'll go back and make sure they're public. Good shout, Juliana, thank you. But you will be very welcome for the moment, and for this series, they're all free. You can go back and interrogate those and you'll learn something, but equally 15 minutes, oh, that's kind of you, Lindsay, thank you. If you want a 15-minute one-to-one, by all means, get in touch. keith@salesmarvel.co.uk. I definitely don't bite. And there should be some loads of stuff going on the website at the moment as well. But for anyone that runs a Just Me business, you will know what an incredible overhead that is. So listen, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Some great questions coming out. And if you've got anything else, by all means, get in touch. But otherwise, thank you very much. Stay home for the most part. Protect the NHS. Save lives. Stay safe and well. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Bye now.